Wonderful. Hello and welcome to Discover Art Vault, Support for Emerging Artists with Dean Annie Gérin and Curator and Concordia alumna Cheryl Sim. Today's webinar is the first event in Concordia's 30th annual Homecoming festivities. Homecoming 2020 is also our first virtual edition of the annual tradition, so thank you so much for being a part of it with us. My name is Cherry Marshall, and I'm a proud two-time Concordia grad. I'm also the Principal Director of Development in our university's Faculty of Fine Arts. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that Concordia's campuses are located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganoya-Gahaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. Following today's discussion, I'll be moderating a short question period for you to ask questions to our guests. Please go ahead and type your questions in the chat box. I look forward to seeing them. My colleague Christina Ramsey will be helping me in keeping an eye on the chat throughout, so please go ahead and enter your questions as you like. As you likely know, the path to becoming a professional artist can be a daunting one. The transition from student to professional is especially challenging. Today's speakers will discuss how society can support its emerging artists and what role the university community and our alumni can play. You'll also hear about a new initiative we're very, very excited about, the Art Vault Collection, a not-for-profit artwork loan and sales service based at Concordia and supported by the Thomson Family Trust. I'd like to introduce our exceptional speakers today. We're very lucky to be joined by Cheryl Sim, who is the Managing Director and Curator at Phi Foundation for Contemporary Art. Her current curatorial research interests include the diaspora condition, screen theory, political economy, clothing as a marker of identity, and the use of music in contemporary art. Her recent exhibitions include Growing Freedom by Yoko Ono and the group show Relations, Diaspora and Painting. She completed a PhD in the Études et Pratiques des Arts program at the Université du Québec à Montréal and an MA in Media Studies right here at Concordia. Her book, Wearing the Cheongsam, Dress and Culture in Chinese Diaspora, was released in September 2019 on Bloomsbury Academic. She's also a media artist, musician, and singer with 5 albums as a solo artist and with the electronic group Gazelle. We're also so pleased to have professor, scholar, and accomplished administrator Annie Gérin, who began her term as Dean of Concordia's Faculty of Fine Arts on August 1st, 2020. She has a track record in senior academic leadership roles and in university governance, and is committed to respect-based dialogue and decolonization. Fluent in English, French, and Russian, Gérin holds a PhD in the history of art and cultural studies from the University of Leeds, a Master in Art History from York University, and a BA in Art History from the Université de Montréal. She has published extensively and is known for her research in Canadian Soviet art of the 20th and 21st centuries, with a special interest in art as experienced by non-specialized publics outside of gallery spaces. Welcome, Annie. Welcome, Cheryl. We're so pleased to have you with us today and to have you have this wonderful discussion to introduce our new program. I'm now going to turn it over to Annie to get this chat started.
Thank you for the introduction, Sherry. Hello, and thank you for joining us for Homecoming. We're starting our fall semester this week with trepidation. It's quite an unusual start. Staff and faculty have worked all summer to make this experience safe and enriching for everybody. So we're innovating in many ways this fall, and we're really looking forward to seeing how it goes and what we learn from the experience. So thank you for being with us. It means a lot. I'd like to begin this conversation by talking about the unique position our fine arts students occupy. They stand in a liminal space between the professional and the academic worlds. And that awkward position is precisely what we're hoping to address with the creation and the launch of Art Vault. Lines between the professional and the academic is less clear for many fine arts students than it is for most other students at Concordia. Many interact with the professional world while they study at university. In fact, the Faculty of Fine Arts is really interconnected with Montreal's cultural sphere. So our students can't help but experience it and participate in it through their instructors, course projects, professional networks like Art Highs, festivals like Art Matters, as well as the many performance and exhibition opportunities that pop up organically throughout the year. In effect, their professional lives have already started. And so during their degree, they feel that they have a foot solidly grounded in two worlds. But when they graduate, both feet shift swiftly into one world outside the university, and they can lose their balance when that happens. They no longer benefit from the huge volume of resources that Concordia offers, such as studios, technical centers, equipment, teachers, mentors, research funds, and student groups. New alumni often find themselves on their own without support systems or institutional resources to propel them down the path to their professional creative practices. So Art Vault was designed to fill this gap. Art Vault is a post-university support structure to equip people for this transition. It's open to students in their last semester and to recent alumni who have graduated from an undergraduate, graduate, or doctorate program within the last 3 to 5 years. What I love about Art Vault is how it asks us as educators to reflect on big questions about the lifespan of a fine arts education. What responsibilities do we as an institution have to our students and alumni to help them realize their career paths? What kind of responsibility do we have as a cultural institution to exert our influence, create professional networks, and ensure that Montreal remains a vibrant cultural center? Art Vault recognizes that alumni success is essential to ensuring that Montreal's cultural ecosystem flourishes, and that is no small task. All of this is made possible by the very generous support of the Peter and Thomson family. The Peter and Thomson Family Innovation Fund was created to seed innovative, groundbreaking projects which could not be easily funded through other means. The concept of Art Vault is very dear to the heart of Leslie Rendon, who represents the Thomson family. She wanted Concordia University to establish a program to advance fine arts students' development outside of traditional avenues and to create professional pathways for students. I really need to say that through the Peter and Thomson Family Innovation Fund, we're constantly encouraged to think bigger. So Art Vault launched last spring during the pandemic, when everybody unexpectedly found themselves literally isolated. It launched the pilot edition of its mentorship program, pairing 11 established alumni with 11 emerging ones for a series of online meetings and discussions. There have also been residencies programs at Bâtiment 7 in Pointe-Saint-Charles and with Feminist Media Arts Center, ADA-X, which you might also know as Studio XX. There have been professional training opportunities also, pairing up with Arch, another Montreal-based initiative dedicated to supporting emerging artists, and with the online journal Momus to offer a 2-week-long online training program for emerging critics. The unbelievably dynamic Art Vault team has a lot more in the works, but the biggest event to come is the launch of the Art Vault collection, a non-for-profit artwork loan and sales service. The Art Vault collection will help recent alumni launch their career by showcasing their work and connecting them with art patrons. A professional jury will select a new collection of artworks that best represents multidisciplinary contemporary art practices, including media, visual arts, and performing arts. Selected works will then be available for loan or for purchase by clients of the Art Vault collection. Each year, a jury will also choose 3 art advisors, also recent alumni. The contracted advisors will offer a personalized service to Art Vault collection patrons, from art advising and curatorial assistance to shipping and installation. To promote the launch of the Art Vault collection, we are organizing this fall a series of virtual events to introduce and drive interest around this upcoming initiative. So on October 15th, we will host an online sales event. 17 artworks by 17 artists will be showcased. An important thing to know is that all revenues will go directly to the artists. Then on October 22nd, we will present a special virtual showcase of performances, sound and video artworks by 7 emerging creative practitioners. I invite you to join us for these 2 upcoming events. Registration will be up soon, so follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and details are to follow also on our website. All this brings me to today's conversation, the first of these online events. It's my great pleasure to chat with Cheryl Sim today, artist as well as Managing Director and Curator of the Phi Foundation for Contemporary Art. While Cheryl joins me on the screen, I'm seeing you, Cheryl. I'd like to encourage all of our viewers to visit the current Phi Foundation exhibition titled Relations, Diaspora and Painting. It's a really thoughtful show about the complexity of the diversity of the diasporic experience. And perhaps on a personal note, I'd like to tell you, Cheryl, that Phi is one of my very favorite exhibition spaces in Montreal. I find your programming forward-thinking and always relevant. I also know that you think of the gallery space as a site for learning, for building community, and for supporting new generations of artists. And so in all of that, I believe that we share a mission and we play complementary roles in the Montreal ecosystem. So welcome, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such a privilege and an honor to be with you in this conversation. And thank you to Concordia for this invitation and this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
So since a very famous book that Richard Florida published in 2002, I'm sure you know it, The Rise of the Creative Class, many people have understood that artists and creators can be drivers for economic development and for quality of life. When the UNESCO speaks of sustainable cities, culture always occupies a central role. It's seen as one of the 4 pillars of sustainability, along with society, environment, and economy. And they're always seen as being intertwined. They're never separated. So I think it makes sense for all kinds of reasons that we would want to foster a healthy arts community. But in Montreal's particular context, why do you think, Cheryl, it's so important to develop a healthy art scene?
Yeah, I mean, the importance of a healthy art scene in Montreal is, it's totally rooted in a belief that artists and the work they do, they help us look at the world differently. Often their questions are our questions, and they engage our emotions and stimulate our minds through a unique vision. Art helps us be more critical, right, about the world and the society that we live in. And that can help us become more caring, compassionate, and connected with ourselves and each other. And these are values that also, I guess, really inform the foundation. I mean, art should be part of our everyday lives. And it, I guess, it's fundamentally beneficial to our well-being. It does a lot more than we think it does.
But so from your point of view, what would be the traits of a healthy art scene? What does it consist of?
You mentioned the word ecosystem, and I guess it does become part of thinking about what makes up a healthy ecosystem. So there's all these different parts, right? And so in a healthy ecosystem, we'd have artists who are able to make work across disciplines and enjoy and thrive through interdisciplinary practices, have the resources to make their work. We've got a wide variety of venues that exist that can show their work. And these venues and the people who work in them are able to support presentation well. We've got, good critics and curators, folks who are talking to each other and sharing ideas, where we've got individual collectors and collecting organizations who are active and engaged, where there's a genuine space for critical discussion. I think that's really important. And where like an appetite for art is cultivated among the general public, starting with kids, right? So that we ensure that there's a future for art to be a life-giving force.
I think that's a really good point, that people throughout their lives actually participate in art in very different ways. And I think it struck me when you said that we need to create space for debate, right? And when I think of this, it's not just debate between artists. It's actually debate between artists and curators, artists and patrons, alumni, like we're doing now, but also between artists and civic administrations, right? How will our cities be transformed by the presence of artists? How can artists contribute to creating spaces, common spaces, public spaces that are more livable, right? So it actually touches us on many levels, from the personal experience that we have, from the economic experience of the city, but also the public experience of the city.
The public experience is super key because, art has tended to be something that sort of is a separator rather than something that brings people together. And then there have been these narratives just perpetuated where art, contemporary art, that's for other people, it's exclusive, it's not for me, or, I'm sort of disenfranchised from the conversation. And that's got to change. And so we want to empower people to, embrace art as yours. We're artists to share, artists to have the conversation, and to empower people to have their own readings about what they're seeing, because there's no wrong answer, and then to enjoy that process as well, and then we really get into a conversation about art, sort of fortifying, a human experience.
So I think we agree that artists are a really important part of the world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
So how do we help emerging artists to succeed? What do they need to succeed in today's world?
Man, I mean, the going to art school is amazing because it gives you an opportunity to explore your questions, like to ask, what am I interested in? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to be of service to, as an artist? And so you really get to dig in, and that's a really lifelong journey, right? To question, why am I making art and what do I want to say? But art school can sometimes, when you're focused on that, there are other things that practical skills, I guess, that can help you to succeed and have a really, like, an impact, which could be things like becoming a really good grant writer. Not obvious, not something that, I don't know that it's something that you were born with. I think it's something that you develop as a skill. Being able to know how to create simple, comprehensive tools, like how to write a really clear artist statement, developing tools like websites or just even a simple PDF, but being able to convey what it is you're trying to do in ways that people can sort of get a bit of a hold on what it is that is making you compelled to make the work that you do, and then they get really interested. And it's just sort of getting to know what that ecosystem is as well, and applying yourself to it. building relationships, building friendships across all parts of the ecosystem, and understanding that everything's interconnected. These are the kind of things, practical things that you can actually do, actions that you can take that I really think can help, propel you for success.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about how important relationships are in building a career and establishing a practice.
Right.
So quite often young artists will do that through semi-formal, semi-informal channels, like going to art openings, for example, and meeting other artists who kind of, again, in informal ways, will mentor them, meeting, future patrons or gallery owners who will become interested in their works. And also by hearing these conversations, they start to learn about how to speak about their own image, right? So during pandemic times, what do we do? Like, do we need to help emerging artists in different ways? Or do you feel that the world has already starting to shift and these opportunities are already starting to take new shapes?
Yeah, I really believe in sort of Desserteau's sort of idea that people will always find a way, no matter how impossible, how many barriers are up. And artists being incredibly creative people are always going to find ways to make those connections. I mean, we're doing it here now. There are definitely safe ways to connect with people in person as well. We're not doing openings in the same way, but we're finding other ways to find each other. And I don't think that's going to end. It'll probably enrich in, sort of the way that we communicate with each other, and communicating this way, even through this sort of mediated form, is definitely not obvious when you begin, but you start to build up a certain kind of sort of sixth or seventh sense, and I feel like artists will be able to figure these things out with each other as well. Sort of how do we extend our networks, within the university and extend them out. And I think it's from the outside in as well. There are artist-run centers, the Foundation organization, for example, and museums, sort of across all the various parts of the ecosystem that are also trying to figure out how we can, at this time, still make meaningful connections with one another, and getting on the ground, sort of with an emerging artist is like such an exciting thing, because you're sort of working with them, you're looking at their work at a super exciting and crucial time, when things are starting to galvanize, and an artist is really starting to understand the roots of their question and understand, their methodologies and their concepts. So, if you can support early on, then, that kind of connection and major impact that you can have is, incredibly nurturing. And that kind of energy, I think, can, sort of get beyond the distance that we're experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm. You were talking earlier about writing grants and all of the things that artists actually have to learn. And I'm with you on this. I agree that people can learn these skills. It's interesting though. I've worked in many different universities across Canada, and there's a bit of taboo in arts department about the monetization of artworks, for example, and about artists learning how to sell themselves. It's usually not taught within the usual university courses. And, I think this is why I'm so grateful actually for this program, for ArtVault, because it does some of these things. It allows students or alumni to kind of learn about how to talk to patrons, how to place their work, how to price their work also, which is so important. But this is also something that universities can't do alone, right? We really, really need to work with our partners to do that, because the art world is changing so quickly that we need to do this with people like you.
No, it's crazy. I'm super impressed by Art Volt. You know, that there is true. You know, it's super terrifying to be sort of graduating and then sort of thrust out there, and there really isn't a good bridge that kind of can equip you. You know, and across again all of these different nodes within you know, how art presentation and making and selling and how it all happens, and it seems like the sort of the Art Volt model gives people all kinds of different experiences, whether you're going to be an advisor, which is kind of, you know, like working as an exhibition coordinator, curator, to sort of figuring out what is the work worth, what's the marketplace like. And also too, I think it's really important that Art Volt stay really critical in terms of how it looks at the art market, that it doesn't fall too much into conventions, that it understands what the conventions are, but like artists constantly work to subvert, to make sure that, you know, there's equity at all levels within the marketplace, because it ain't perfect. I will tell you that for sure. And it needs to be questioned all the time. And that can be, you know, a really important function of Art Volt as well. You know, being service to, you know, the artists and the graduating students that it's serving.
Yeah, absolutely. So during the last few months, a lot of artists have had to move out of their studios or shift their practices because they don't have access to foundries, to big printers, to all of these things that we don't necessarily imagine going into the artwork. I mean, we appreciate the finished product, but we don't see the machinery and understand that it's often shared and in places that have become less accessible. Are you, in your discussion with artists, can you enlighten us on some of the strategies that you're hearing artists deploy?
Well, a lot of artists are working again in that Deserto spirit. It's like, I can't, you know, get access to my studio or to, you know, equipment and whatnot. So what can I do? And some artists are working on smaller scale. They're working with found materials like never before. What do I actually have around me? They're exploring, you know, sort of media like this, what we're using as performance tools. It's actually these adverse conditions, you know, they always bring out resilience in artists. And in addition to things like how can we rethink the online exhibition so that it also sidesteps the kind of obvious thing of a kind of guided tour, sort of Google Maps thing, and that actually gets us into, well, what does it mean to look at a show and look at an exhibition, and sort of getting us into a next stage of thinking through what it means to present as well. So it's a really exciting and interesting time.
Really exciting and interesting. It's been such a strange summer. The rapid closing down of studios and galleries, the opening up of new facilities. Now a lot of galleries are opening up. So Phi Foundation is open now, which is really great. There's another event that had an immense impact on us this summer. That was the death of George Floyd. It sparked the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it, in the first instance, directed our attention to the voices and works of Black artists and curators. But I think it also made us very conscious of the fact that despite our best efforts, the art world is not as inclusive and diverse as we would like it to be, or that it should be, actually. So I'm wondering, from your point of view as an artist, but also as a curator, as an administrator, what are the things that we can do to encourage more diversity in the art, and perhaps more equitable access to resources, more visibility, more opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that systemic racism operates in the art world. You know, it's not a myth, it actually happens. And it's an extension of its hold in our society. So fostering conditions to allow for more Black, Indigenous, and artists of color to thrive should be considered part of best practices for all cultural organizations, as a way, again, to contribute to, you know, a healthy society. So art institution directors, boards need to make space for these artists and collections and programming, but also make space for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in positions of decision-making power across all departments, you know, throughout the ecosystem again. And that really just starts with acknowledging, right, that that there is work to be done internally. And all art institutions, you know, from artist-run centers to museums, need to allocate those resources needed to empower people to make these positive changes. So, you know, the training, the awareness, you know, and the awareness will manifest itself in the understanding that, you know, we're, for example, prevented from learning about the history of slavery in Quebec and about the cultural genocide of Indigenous people for a reason. And that needs to be addressed now. So I think it starts with addressing that there is roots, that systemic racism is rooted. And we've joked about this before, but those of us who want to work towards anti-oppression in the art world can be like mint, and we can, you know, infiltrate and take over. That's those roots, those systemic roots.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think. I really love your mint analogy. I mean, I think it's actually really adequate, because we can't just make table rase, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but it really needs to come from the ground up also, as well as top down. So it kind of goes with education, and I think having higher standards for all of ourselves, right? So that's interesting. But if I can loop back to one of the things we said earlier about the importance of art everywhere in our society and in the public spaces, I think it's really important actually for all of us to have this diversity of artists, so that people recognize themselves actually in the artwork, that children also recognize themselves in the images that are produced, the stories that are told, and the people that they can look up to.
Oh yeah, 100%. That the importance of sort of seeing yourself as being, you know, a positive and strong representation in society is only good, right, for you know, the future, for potential actual full participation of a wide variety of folks. That is really what we should be working towards. I mean, that's really what is going to take us to sort of the next level of evolution, you know, of truly coming into our own potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'll take us back to the matter at hand.
Okay.
Art Vault and collecting, basically, because what we're hoping to launch as one of these measures to launch artistic careers is this collection that people can buy works from and or loan them and
Right.
install them and live with them. So you're an artist and a curator, but are you also a collector?
Right. I always feel like, I don't know, maybe I've got my own little complex about, sort of calling myself a collector, and that collecting is something other people do. And I just want to live with art. Living with someone's art it's like a great privilege, and it's a relationship that you embark on. And I do tend to collect the work of artists I know and then become close friends with. But that's absolutely not a prerequisite at all. One of the first works that I acquired was a photo-based work by Caroline Senna, who was at the time emerging. And I'm delighted to see her work evolve and that she's just doing so well. Yeah, I guess I just want to surround myself and live with art and have that experience, and it's a really rewarding thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I really also like to live with art, but also see the careers of the people that I've collected evolve. I mean, it enriches my life on a daily basis. Do you have, I mean, you've given us what you'd have as advice for emerging artists, but do you have advice for emerging collectors?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, it's really a no-brainer, I would say. It's like nothing to be intimidated by. You trust your instincts, you give yourself over. When you're looking at art, one of the things I like to think about is surrendering oneself, giving oneself over to that reading, and allowing it to happen. And I think it's the same thing with collecting. And there's so many amazing resources out there. And now there's Artvolt as well, where, you can just go in there with an open heart and mind, and just let yourself be guided. It is just a wonderful thing to do, and I thoroughly recommend it.
Good. Do you have ideas also about how people collect all of these new types of practices that are happening right now? Because we're talking about performance art, not an obvious thing to collect. Video. There's all kinds of time-based practices that artists are making now. So how do collectors interact with that?
Oh, I find there's no limit now, where there used to be these ideas and these concerns that certain works were not collectible. We've seen that video, for example, follows a very similar model as photography, where editions can be made. There may be 2-3 editions maximum of, say, a video work, and there are very stringent ways of operating, even for the collector, that makes it such, though, that permissions and certain conditions have to be respected in the presentation of work. But that doesn't mean it can't be acquired. So video, VR, AR, these are all works, media and tools, right, for making art that are really interesting to question, how they can be acquired and enjoyed. And so there doesn't really, even performance work, even though Tino Segal, I think you have to sign some crazy agreement to have his work, presented in a museum setting. There's no reason why that piece of paper with those instructions can't also be part of a collector's works. And so we'll see how that evolves for sure. But I would say there are no limits, really, and everything is up for discussion.
And it's going to be interesting for our facilitators and Artvolt to have these discussions with collectors when they counsel them as to what they can live with or want to live with, and what they want to explore as new types of art practices.
Exactly. I mean, the garden is super wild.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to encourage our viewers to chime in and ask questions about the Artvolt projects, or about some of the issues that we've discussed. And I'll pass it over to Cherry to moderate.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has, been, I think, a really exciting chat. And I think you touched on so many interesting topics that we can dive into a bit here. So I definitely encourage anyone to put some questions out there. And I do have some that have come in. So I'll get started with some questions while everyone else is thinking up some more. A number of questions have been related to kind of the preparation for graduating or being a part of Art Vault. And some people have asked, are there things that students should be doing ahead of time to kind of get ready for this or to get ready for the transition? Like what can be done, say, during the degree or in the last year of a program to be ready for that transition? And I guess I'll throw that out to both of you to see what ideas you might have.
Well, I can start, but I think that Cheryl will have even more pertinent information, being an artist herself and a curator. But I think like the biggest advice that I would give to students is to really attend a lot of functions where they can meet artists and curators and peers while they're a student, to not wait until they graduate to start thinking professionally about their work. And we offer a lot of workshops on various professionalization, I can't say it in English, I'm sorry, but becoming more professional. I think it's a really, really good way to enrich their background, and so they start hitting the ground running when they graduate. What do you think,
Yeah.
Cheryl?
No, I totally agree. I mean, don't forget that, when you're finishing your degree, that you have developed a bagage, you have skills, you have ideas and your work, it already has worth, and that you can contribute something already by getting out there and starting to make these relationships with people. So that is really, really important advice. And then I would back it up by, getting that artist statement ready, getting, sort of a little simple portfolio, a bunch of JPEGs together, in a folder of your favorite works, details, but also as much as you can, installation views, sort of your ideal installation view of your works. For any curator who's worth their salt, they're going to try and see as much pre-graduation work and graduation work as possible, because I mean, that's our job. Our job is to get out there and see what's going on and get a really good understanding of how artists are pushing contemporary art practices. So if you have the tools ready to offer when you meet somebody who says, yeah, I'd really love to know more about your work, bam, you send it, and then you start a conversation.
So I have a question that leads really well into that here, and this is for Cheryl. But do you have any advice on building relationships with organizations like Thomson Phi or other galleries?
Okay.
How do people get in touch with people like you? And are there steps that people can do at the beginning of their career to get themselves seen?
Right. There's sort of two things that are going on, that can be going on. So me doing, having, the opportunity to talk today gives you sort of may give somebody sort of the impetus to say, well, okay, I would like to get in touch with, Cheryl, say, and get in touch with the foundation, and maybe, send an email, and then I'll say, yeah, we're having an opening in November or something like that. Maybe we can have a Zoom chat or something like that, or so making little connections that way. So it's sort of like you're giving me an opportunity, and then that's putting me in touch with people who might want to be able to get in touch with me or one of my colleagues, or I'll be like, hey, you should really talk to someone at X, for example, and this person would really be interested in your work, and this is how it happens. So yeah, I think that's how the relationships start, and that's how we start building networks as well.
Yeah, if I can chime in here, I've heard in many years of teaching, I've heard students say that they're nervous or they don't feel adequate showing their work, you know, like who am I to ask this brilliant curator to look at my work? And I think that students or artists in general should never forget that curators actually want to look at work and
Exactly.
actually want to discover new artists. And as Cheryl pointed out, even if there's no contractual connection that happens with the curator that you reach out to, this person will know other curators and will also be often able to direct you to colleagues.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Great. And we have a question here from David, and I think this plays really well into what we're talking about, but what is the role of our alumni in helping to promote careers of young artists? Like, what can our own network do at this point, either with people who are involved in Art Vault or young alumni in general? How can we kind of build those connections and make that network like work for our graduates?
That's a really great question. I mean, there are just so many ways. One of them is participating in events like this one and talking about what we do. I think that our alumni in a lot of ways are our best ambassadors, because you've been with us, you know, both the quality of the education that our programs give, but also the struggles of that passage to the post-graduation world. So you're you know, better equipped than anybody else to speak about us, and so that's a great help. I think that all of our programs through Art Vault are also about connecting alumni with the professional world. And so if you have these skills, if you are in positions where you're able to help our students and young alumni, we'd love to hear about it. So you can certainly contact us through Art Vault or the faculty or the foundation advancement. And we'd love to talk to you. So there's many ways. There's also obviously sponsoring some of our programs that is helpful for the students, and it allows us to actually offer them things that our normal academic profiles can't offer.
And as a note, if anyone actually wants to follow up directly about concrete ways to help, I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'm absolutely happy anytime to talk to any alum who have any ideas or might want to get involved. So I'll throw that in there so you can reach out to me as well. We'll change tracks a little bit here, and I think move into an area that you touched on in your talk, and that's about representation and voice. And we have a question here about what's Concordia doing as part of Art Vault to make sure that our diverse voice is included in programs like Art Vault and in the faculty in general.
Well, I'll start by Art Vault and then shift into the faculty. So Art Vault will be, the works that will be chosen for Art Vault will be chosen by a jury. And so we're looking at a jury that will be diverse, that will be equipped also, and that will be supported into making choices that will be more open, so that diversity is well represented. So that's something that we've been thinking about from the start. So that's for the collection. Art Vault as a larger project has also been thinking about these issues in different components. So for example, this summer, we had a art critic residency. And so we worked with the community and with donors also to make sure that we had this broad representation from a variety of backgrounds of students to participate in that. And that, to me, that was very, very exciting, because having a diverse group of future art critics also means that tomorrow's art critics will be looking at other types of artists. So I think that all of this kind of works together. At the faculty level, we're thinking about it a lot. It's important to us because, I mean, Cheryl said it about the art world, but it's exactly the same as far as I'm concerned for the institution. We need students to be able to see themselves in faculty members. We need students to aspire to the kinds of careers that they have. We also need them to recognize themselves or recognize the questions that they want to ask in the material that is presented in the classroom. And so we're about to unroll publicly a program. It's not public yet, but you know, check us out on our website. It will happen soon. But what we're trying to do is really equip our faculty members to bring these difficult discussions, to talk about things like cultural appropriation in artworks. How does that work? So that people know and can really talk about it, and so that students also can avoid certain trappings. We're also kind of thinking of ways to attract broader diversity in the faculty members we hire. And so this is also something that you can look at on our website, but we have really exciting new faculty members coming in who have expertise in art of the diaspora, in Black experience in art. So we're really, really happy to have these people within us so that we can work together to build a much more diverse environment and much diverse discussions.
Cheryl, did you have anything you'd like to add from your perspective that you see the university having a role in terms of promoting diversity?
Well, it really is, as Annie has pointed out, has to happen sort of from the bottom up and the top down. I know that I was, you know, for my PhD, I was searching for, you know, sort of that supervisor who I thought, you know, would be able to help me unlock a few things. And at that level, I wasn't able to find anyone of color, you know, someone who, you know, understood at that level. I mean, I still found an incredible supervisor who, you know, I love dearly, but that would have made a huge difference. I can say though, that at the MA level, I worked with Monica King-Gagnon in communications, and you know, that she was there, that she's doing the research, able to do the kind of research that she's doing, you know, is worth its weight in gold. And so I would absolutely sort of, I couldn't underscore more just how important it is to you know, to really take this seriously and see how, again, from the ground up, having I guess a professorship that is going to be able to serve adequately the you know, a lot of these interests is you know, it can't not be done.
I agree, and I think it is kind of our role and our privilege as universities to put in place the things we want to see happening in the world of tomorrow, right? So we're not just forming the students, for example, for the art world of today, we're forming them for the art world of tomorrow, right? So a lot of what we're doing is not just about skills, it's about empowering and making sure that they take their place. And so that happens through skills, but as Cheryl said, it also happens through participating in discussions with faculty members and other students. And you know, emulation is also really important in that. And having the right person to critique your work on the terms that it needs to be critiqued is really important for artists.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about this new initiative. I certainly am. I'm sure everyone else is too. I have a really interesting question here from Susan, who asks, what about artists who are very introverted and from whom networking seems very scary, like in a situation like a vernissage? What advice would you have for someone who doesn't necessarily feel comfortable in that scenario to help promote themselves? That's
me. It's like no one believes that, but most of the time, you know, as artists, we live up here. We live in our heads. We spend a lot of time alone in the studio or in front of computers or whatever it happens to be, and so that it becomes a muscle that you train. You get out there, and then you sort of take little steps, sort of, you just go, you just go with a friend if you can. And ultimately there, you're there to see work. So you can just get used to going, looking at the work, checking out the scene. Maybe, you connect with people that you do know. You try and get other folks to go. Sometimes that helps too. But you just get into the habit of it and start to, sort of enjoy it. And eventually there will be a moment where you just break through and say, like, I really want to talk to that person. And believe me, it may seem that the person that you want to talk to, like that's the scariest thing. But if it's an artist, for example, whose work you admire, or someone, another cultural worker, we're like 99.9% of the time going to be super flattered when someone comes up and says, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I really like your work, and this is my name and this is what I do. It's just take a chance. It's going to be fine. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
And it gets easier with time.
It really, really does. That those muscles build up, and then you're invincible. You're like, and I totally get it. I like, even now, I'll go to openings and be like, I just want to like be invisible because, whatever is happening that day, you want to see the work, but you're not necessarily feeling, hyper social. But once you get in there, it's like getting in the pool. Once you get in there, you're actually fine. The water's good and feeling fine. And yes, you start to enjoy it.
That's very good advice. And I completely agree that you definitely have to practice. I don't think it comes naturally for anyone, not for me either. So I think we just have time for but one last question here. And we have a question from Kathleen who wants to know, how many completed works should an artist have to start a website and to talk to curators? Like, is there a magic number or, an amount of work that needs to be completed to feel like you're ready to go out there and take that step?
Is it, Annie, shall I answer from my perspective?
I don't know.
I don't think there's a magic number. I think it's just work that you feel strongly about, that has the levels and layers of gravitas that you feel you can speak to and defend. So if that's one work, great. If it's five, great.
Can I ask a parallel question, Cheryl? Because I'm actually wondering about this. Should people think more about showing a coherent body of work, or show the diversity of what they can do? And I think that question is even more pressing for emerging artists, because in their coursework, they've been working in all kinds of different medium. And so how should they approach that question?
I guess I would sort of say the same, sort of a variation on that same theme, which is to look at your body of work, look at the body of work that you've come away with after your degree, and maybe pick out the ones that not necessarily have to have cohesion, sort of from one work to the next or series to the next, but rather that speak to your questions in the richest way. Because ultimately, it's not necessarily about, how I see the work. I mean, initially that's part of it, but if there's something that engages me further to want to go deeper, then that's when you as an artist that's when you have me. and then, I'll want to engage with you and understand, how this work sort of relates to the other work that may seem heterogeneous in some ways, but what I've seen in all my years is that even the bodies of work that do seem to change and to be sort of have a kind of homogeneity that's heterogeneous as well. Sort of like there are red threads, that link these works together, even if they're along different disciplines or different media. So it's really just about how do these works, you know, sort of reflect my deeper questions. That's all that's really important.
Well, as loath as I am to cut this conversation off, because it's super interesting, we are just about out of time, but thank you to both of you so much. This has been a wonderful kickoff to Art Vault, and you know, it's certainly our privilege, Cheryl, to have you join us today. And Annie, thank you so much. I know there have been some other questions come in kind of specifically around Art Vault, so I'll just quickly mention that Art Vault is looking for participants from outside of Montreal. So if you're not located here, but you think you could mentor or you have something to offer or whatnot, absolutely, we're doing virtual like everyone else, so please reach out. We did put up the email address for the Art Vault coordinator, Fanny Gedwa, who's been here today and has been listening to all of your questions as well. So please feel free to reach out to her or to myself. We're really looking forward to hearing more from all of you. So this was our first event, but we're hoping that you'll join us again for the soft launch events for our Art Vault collection. The first is October 15th, and the second is October 22nd. And that's when we'll get into showcasing the student art and kind of really kind of kicking off this exciting initiative. So the event details for those will be shared with you soon by email, and you can also follow our social media accounts. We'll be making the announcements on there. So we're going to be putting a quick feedback in the chat. So let us know if there's anything you'd like us to know now. We hope this met your expectations. We're really, really privileged to have had you with us today. Thank you again for joining and helping us kick off Homecoming with a fine arts focused event. We're really pleased about that. If you're interested in any more of the Homecoming events, you can look up online at concordia.ca/homecoming. So thanks again, Annie, Cheryl. Thanks to all of you that joined us. And we look forward to continuing these conversations with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.